We want to hear about crazy Nebuchadnezzar today. So that's where we're at. Crazy Nebuchadnezzar. This is a great story. Just overall speaking, for me, I love this story more as we get to election year because God can humble anybody. If he chooses to do it, he can humble anybody. And it doesn't take him any challenge at all to do it, and he can really humble a person. Because what Nebuchadnezzar, how humbled he was pretty bad. All right, and so we're getting through this where Daniel's interpreting this dream that Nebuchadnezzar had. All right, so I won't review it all because you need to do it on your own, but I want to just get into how Daniel now starts to interpret the dream. So he had this long dream. So Daniel will start the interpretation in verse 19. So this is, we did part of it 2 weeks ago, so I mean, that part will be a review, but very little of it. Okay, so the translation I have here says, Then Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, was appalled for a moment, and his thoughts alarmed him. Okay, he's appalled because he heard Nebuchadnezzar tell him the dream, and Daniel obviously knows the interpretation of it. That's why he's appalled. All right, and then the king said, Belteshazzar, do not let the dream and its meaning alarm you. Belteshazzar answered, My lord, if only the dream were about your enemies and its meaning about your foes. That's not really a complete sentence, but that's what he said. And we talked about that last time because Daniel knows what the dream is about. And so Nebuchadnezzar sees the shock on his face when he tells the dream to Daniel. And so Nebuchadnezzar realizes Daniel knows what it means and is like, whoa, this is bad. And Daniel doesn't want to tell Nebuchadnezzar what the meaning of the dream is because it's about him and it's going to be bad about him. And Nebuchadnezzar is known for having a temper. Okay, and even though Daniel's really a trusted friend of Nebuchadnezzar, he's still got to be diplomatic about how you do this. So that's how this works. All right. So here's here's kind of the this is the interpretation, not all of it though. Okay, so then it says, the tree that you saw, which grew and became strong, and its height reached to heaven, and it was visible to the entire earth, and its leaves were beautiful, and its fruit abundant, and food for all was in it. Under it the beasts of the field dwelt, and in its branches the birds of the sky dwelt. You are it, your majesty, for you have grown and you have become great, and your greatness has grown and reached to heaven, and your dominion to the end of the earth. That part was not hard to say. Okay, that's pretty easy telling Nebuchadnezzar, you're the man. You got it. Everything's going great because of you, and that's what this tree is all about. Then he throws the zinger in here. And because you saw, your majesty, a watcher and a holy one coming down from heaven, and he said, chop down the tree and destroy it. However, the stump of its root in the earth leave, with the band of iron and brass, with the grass of the field, and with the dew from the sky let it be wet, and with the beasts of the field will be its portion, until 7 times pass over it. All right, now, when Daniel says that, by the way, if you really look closely, which is not a big deal to do this, but Daniel in his interpretation, he kind of politely, I was going to use conveniently, but it's really not convenient, it's more politely leaves out some of the details that were in the original dream. And the one detail he leaves out here is saying that, he just says that you... with the dust of the dew from the sky, let it be wet. Okay, with the grass of the field. Okay, he doesn't say anything about what the dream said, that your mind will become like a beast. He leaves that part out, that you will have the mind of a cow is what it's going to be. You will have a mind of a cow. All right, that part he leaves out. Okay. The rest of it, he keeps the rest in there, okay? And again, as I mentioned 2 weeks ago, it makes sense that he would leave that out. He doesn't need to put all the details into this right now, and because this most likely is not done in private. Okay, Nebuchadnezzar's in his throne room and his advisors and guards and others all around him. And now Daniel's going to have to say in front of all of these other people, Nebuchadnezzar, you're going to become like a cow. So he doesn't really want to say that. All right, so he leaves just that little detail out. But the rest of it, he keeps there. He keeps the rest of it there. But it's just kind of interesting to point out that he does convenient or diplomatically leave some stuff out. All right, so then the next verse. This is the meaning, Your Majesty. It is a decree of the Most High that has come upon my Lord, Your Majesty. So you will be driven away from humans, and your dwelling will be with the beasts of the field, and you will be fed plants like bulls. See, again, he leaves out, and you will think, he leaves out, you will have the mind of a bull. He leaves that out. Okay, and you will be wet with the dew from the sky. And 7 times will pass over you until you know that the Most High rules the human kingdom, and he gives it to whomever he wishes. And because they said to leave the stump of the root of the tree, your kingdom will remain yours when you know that heaven rules. Okay, we'll stop with that. And there's a little bit more there, but stop right there. All right, so this is the bulk of the interpretation of the dream. All right, if you break it down, not word for word, but break down some of the details out of this, what is Daniel emphasizing? He says, this is not what I'm saying. He says, this is the decree of the Most High. This is what God says, the Most High. And Nebuchadnezzar knows Daniel is God as the Most High. He's already acknowledged that before. So this is what the Most High says. This is the way it's going to be. Okay? Daniel's just the messenger. That's all there is to it. Here comes our family now. He's just the messenger. And so that's how he's telling them this is the way it's going to be. This is what's going to happen. And now the other thing to note about that, if that's what Daniel's saying, if Daniel says this is the decree of the Most High, does that mean that it's subject to change? No. This is it. On a little side note, you think about this, I was thinking about this, again, being an election year, so many issues are on the docket, kind of a part of the discussion, and many of the, I've been noticing this lately, watching commercials, and it's like, wow, they're just very blatant about this. The one party, and you'll know who it is, it says that you don't want to vote for this party because they want to stop abortion. Okay, they want to stop abortion. We think women should have the right over their own body, not to say so that they can kill babies. Okay, but it's like, wow, they're just blatant about it now. Just say that's what it is. You want them to tell you that you can't kill babies? Okay, they don't say it that way. So it's that, and then also the transgender stuff. Do you want them to tell you how you can run your own life, or do you want them to control every aspect of your life? Okay, kind of thing. So as you think about that, and this is what I hear from this too, in a way, is that God has said right is right and wrong is wrong. We know that, right? And it's never up to debate. And so it's like when God says life starts at conception, life starts at conception. You don't debate it. That's just the way it is. And that in the beginning he made them male and female. That's the way it is. You don't debate it. But see, people want to debate it. And then when you want to debate it, you've done kind of not what being here, but it's like this. It's like you think you can argue with God about something and he's going to change his mind because you and your supposed righteous holiness and wisdom know there's a better way than what God has set up. No, when God says it, it's not like this is for debate. Kind of like, really authoritarian parents, when they make a rule for their kids, it's like, this isn't for debate. This is the way it is. That's it, period. I mean, that's it. And we're not discussing this. That's it. So here, this is the way it is. God made the decree. This is it. This is what's going to happen. Now, he will have one line here at the end that says, it's possible that it could change if you change. Okay? But at this point, this is the way it is. It's not up for debate. All right? So he explains the whole thing there again. So about you'll be driven away and you'll dwell with humans. One thing he also leaves out here in the verse, 26, But they said, leave the stump of the root of the tree. Okay? The one thing he leaves out that was actually in the dream is that what did the dream say they'll do to the stump? What? Yeah, they'll band it. They'll put iron and bronze, which means what? Yeah, we'll restrain him. Daniel leaves that out. Well, not in verse 26, right?
It says right here, chop down the tree, destroy it, leave the stump of the roots of the earth, bound with a band of iron and bronze. Verse 23.
Oh, no, I know, but when we get down to 26, when he says it again. You're right there, because that's what it said earlier. So when Daniel, down in verse 26, when he's explaining it again, he does leave that little line out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, he does. Right. So when he's actually trying to explain it, he's leaving that out because kind of think about this too. Who would be the people that would bind him? Probably the one standing somewhere in that room. Okay. and does he really want to say, and you will be bound in chains and irons? Okay. Do you really want to say that with these people standing here? And you just leave that out. But it was mentioned earlier. Yeah, it definitely was mentioned earlier. But when it gives a further explanation, he leaves that little thing.
So to mean that his kingdom will be bound, it will be limited.
Oh, no.
He's going through this 7 cycles.
Yeah, but that's not what it is. It's you're the tree, you're the bound one, not the kingdom. It's all you. So that's because that's what he says. You're that tree, and the tree is the stump, so you're the stump. That's you. Now, you and your kingdom kind of go hand in hand, but it's really saying this is you personally. So that's why he tries to soften the blow somewhat for Nebuchadnezzar. But yet, in softening, he doesn't delete any of it. The main point, this is what's going to happen. You will become like a beast. All right, so there's that, okay? But, except for the point, and for how long will this last? It said 7 times. Somewhere in there. Yeah, there it is. 7 times will pass. And what will be the end? How will you know the 7 times are up? From here.
He'll come back to his senses.
And
praise the Lord.
yeah, acknowledge that the Lord rules. Okay? That's what it's going to be. When you come to your senses and know that the Most High rules the human kingdoms, not only that, and he gives it to whomever he wishes. Meaning, Nebuchadnezzar, you're here not because you think you're such a great and awesome, powerful guy. You are that way, but you're here because God put you here. And you need to acknowledge that, which is every ruler in any level of government should acknowledge the reason why I'm here is because God put me here. I'm subject to him. The what? The iron rings that you'll be bound, probably, and now there's not clarity on that. 2 weeks ago I mentioned it, the commentary pointed out, it says, you're not really sure if that's law or gospel. Not really sure that it's law in the sense that you're bound because you're a wild animal, or it's gospel because you're a wild animal, they want to protect you. Keep you, like you chain up something so don't wander off and get hurt. Gospel?
That he has to be bound to keep himself from hurting.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. One or the other, but he is bound for some reason. He will be bound, is what that's saying. He will. They put him in chains somehow. All right?
I took that in context, the fact that he was able to do whatever he wanted right now.
Yes.
God was going to limit his.
It's his prison now. Yeah, he will limit him. Right. That's true. And as you're going to get when this plays itself out, you'll see that too. Okay, so it will never still say what the binding was, but how he was, such freedom he once had will be limited. Yeah. All right, so again, it will last for 7 seasons, or 7 times. Doesn't say seasons, sorry, it said 7 times. And again, we don't think it should literally say 7 years, because as we look back in the chronological history of Nebuchadnezzar, there was never an 8-year time frame where he was where there's peace. And it's going to be 8 years. You're going to find out why I added an extra year in the next verses here. Okay? There was never that time frame where there was that long of a peaceful time when he was in Babylon. All right? And they know that from the Babylonian Chronicle that details that the Babylonians wrote at his time, detailing his life. So 7 times. Now the other viewpoint says it is 7 years, but you can't prove it. You just assume it because of what they want to say later about other things, and they want to turn into years instead of just a figurative thing. So seven, as we understand it, is generally in the Bible a number of completeness. 7 days of creation. So the idea is 7 times is, and this is kind of what you get from this. It says this: it will happen for 7 times until you know. So in other words, when you know, the 7 times are up. Whatever that date is, but when you know that the Most High rules the human kingdom and he gives it to whoever wishes, when you make that awareness and confession, that's the end of the 7 times. So how long that actually will be, we don't know. But it will be a set time where this is completed. Your humiliation has become complete, and it has become successful because you have now acknowledged what you have always needed to acknowledge, that God rules. And that's all God's doing. He's trying to get him to get off that high horse that he has, and he's on. And see that commercial, the Geico commercial, the high horse. Okay, get off the high horse and acknowledge you are not it. You think you rule everything. You don't. You're just a pawn in my hands, is what God is saying to him. So when that happens, then this will happen. All right, so then this part ends with, therefore, your majesty, let my advice be pleasing to you. Break away from your sins with righteousness and from your iniquities by showing mercy to the poor. Perhaps your prosperity will be prolonged. So what is Daniel suggesting? Yes, because what were his ways like? He's not a nice guy. He's not a nice guy at all. And in fact, in the writing of the wall thing you're going to get in the next chapter, when Daniel confronts a descendant of Nebuchadnezzar, and when he's talking about Nebuchadnezzar, he says he had ultimate power. Well, actually, you can just look it up. Chapter 5, verse 19. Because of the high position God gave him, Nebuchadnezzar, all the peoples and nations and men of every language dreaded and feared him. Those the king wanted to put to death, he put to death. Those he wanted to spare, he spared. Those he wanted to promote, he promoted. Those he wanted to humble, he humbled. Okay? But when his heart became arrogant and hardened with pride, he was deposed. All right? So that's what it is. We learn this in Proverbs. God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. And so Nebuchadnezzar is needing God. All right. So God wants Nebuchadnezzar to be saved. You need to realize that. That is the goal. God wants Nebuchadnezzar to be saved. And when anyone's in a state of pride, you can't be saved. Because if you're in a state of pride, the middle of pride is I. It's all about me, okay? And Nebuchadnezzar, he sees everything about himself, and the focus is on him and what he has accomplished. And God says, as long as you see that, you're not seeing me. And if you don't see me, you're going to hell. Okay? You got to see me. So the goal in this, and so I say that because if you ever had to be humbled, the goal in being humbled is so you can see God again. Because in your pride, you weren't seeing him at that time. In pride, you won't be seeing him. But when you're humbled, the goal, not saying that you will do that, this will happen, but the goal when you are humbled is so that you will see your foolishness and your pride, but also see your need for God and recognize God is there to restore you and to forgive you and to transform you. Right, so that's kind of a lesson we can learn from this. None of us have the power that Nebuchadnezzar had. You may have the pride he had, and none of us do, but if you did, this is why. So, and the way Nebuchadnezzar would do this, show that he doesn't have this pride, is by doing what to his people? I mean, that's what this verse is saying. What would he do for his people? Being kind. See that there and then? Showing mercy. to the poor. You know, poor or nobody. If you're a person of prominence and power and position like these people are, poor people are nothing. In fact, they're a drag on you. They draw you down. They're sapping your resources and all that. And the poor are nothing. So you just don't care about the poor. You oppress the poor. You do what you can. And we had some proverbs that were talking about that. And that's what Daniel is recognizing. He said, Nebuchadnezzar, yeah, you got this great kingdom, but at whose expense? At the expense of the poor. You've been oppressing people. You haven't displayed your righteousness. You displayed your arrogance. And now because of that, people are suffering. So maybe if you actually understood that you need to care for the poor and that you express that care, then God would change. God's decree is his decree, but the decree is for Nebuchadnezzar to humble himself. But that's what Daniel is saying. He's not saying God's going to change his decree. He's saying if you humble yourself now, then you don't have to go through with that. But if you don't humble yourself now, then he will go through with that. But he's not going to humble himself. So that's what? Yeah. So Daniel throws it out. So I only say that because Daniel's not contradicting God here. He's not trying to go around God. He's basically saying this is the point of all of this. So if you just do it now, but of course, Daniel doesn't know that Nebuchadnezzar won't change, but certainly God did, right? All right. So that was all of that section. Okay. So then we get to the fulfillment. So starting in verse 28. By the way, you have to remember this whole chapter here. Remember going back to the very beginning of this chapter? This is a letter that Nebuchadnezzar wrote to the whole empire. What we're reading is that letter, okay? And so he is explaining, and in his letter, he's telling people, this is what happened to me. I became like a cow. He's going to say that. He's going to actually truly humble himself and acknowledge that, which is amazing to me. Again, you just never see powerful people ever do this. I've never seen it happen ever. But God had impressed Nebuchadnezzar to the point that he acknowledges that. All right, so here we go. Starting at verse 28. All this came upon King Nebuchadnezzar. At the end of 12 months, see, that's where we get it. So a whole year has passed. So Daniel interprets the dream for Nebuchadnezzar. Then Nebuchadnezzar blew it off. Nothing changed. So a whole year goes by after that dream. So you have to catch this. There's a year gap in here, which, is still explained in the letter. But there's a year gap. So maybe Nebuchadnezzar was frightened when he first heard it, but nothing happened immediately. And as time goes on, you tend to forget. You forget threats. If they never are carried out, you tend to forget them. All right, and so it's kind of like the what is it? Kind of like the idiot buttons on your on dashboard, right? No, not the buttons, but the lights on your dashboard. You just keep ignoring them, and then put tape on or all. Yeah, right. And eventually they just go away, right? It gets towed away. Car gets towed away. But so that's it. Nebuchadnezzar put the tape over the idiot light that's saying you need to do this. He didn't do it. So time went on. Okay. So here we go. At the end of 12 months. So by the way, try to visualize what's going on here. Here's Nebuchadnezzar at the end of 12 months. He was walking on the palace of his kingdom in Babylon. Now, remember I mentioned before that how great this city is. The city walls are roughly 300 feet tall, rock, 300 feet tall of rock, and the city's like 50 miles around, and the walls are 50 feet thick. Okay, that's just the walls. And then what's inside the palace that Babylon's known for? The 7 wonders of the ancient world? The hanging gardens that he made. In fact, I found it said in here, he made that for his wife who was from Mede, and he wanted her to feel like she was home, and she's from the mountain region. So he made these hanging gardens, okay? So Babylon was a glorious city. And all the gold that was brought in there from all their conquerors, when they conquered all these areas, all the plunder they took, all of that's inside the city of Babylon. So again, visualize him. He's standing out on his palace now, and then the king said, Isn't this the great Babylon? Now catch the first person singular pronouns. That I built for a royal residence by the might of my power and for the glory of my majesty. Now, you can't get more arrogant than that, right? And what is he simply saying? All this is mine, and I did it. I own it. It's all mine. All right, but now get the next thing. While the word was still in the king's mouth, he hadn't finished saying it. A voice came from heaven. So how this happened, I have no idea. Who all heard it, I have no idea. But Nebuchadnezzar heard it. It says, "It is spoken to you, King Nebuchadnezzar. The kingdom has passed away from you." Oh, by the way, why do you think this voice was spoken from heaven? Why do you think he heard a voice? And others would be around Nebuchadnezzar too. So I'm assuming they actually did hear it. Yes, there'll be no mistake that what's going to happen now is because of what God's going to do. Yeah, and so everyone needs to know this. He doesn't just go crazy because he just got a bug in him and he went crazy. No, he's going crazy because this is what God is going to do. So again, back what would be said a long time before when we started the Daniel study. Before this time in history, basically who knew about the Most High God? Just Israelites. And now who's going to know about the Most High God? The entire world. Because he's going to write this to the known world. Okay, the entire empire is going to know about it. So God is saying, I'm making my name known because the world needs to know my name for their own good, not just for him. All right, so there it is. So, then this is what it said. It is spoken to you, King Nebuchadnezzar. The kingdom has passed away from you. You will be driven away from humans, and your dwelling will be with the beasts of the field. Grass will be fed to you like to bulls, and 7 times will pass over until you know that the Most High rules the human kingdom, and he gives it to whomever he wishes. All right, so this is the declaration by God. Then the next word is immediately. Okay, there's no delay now. I waited a whole year for you to humble yourself. God shows how patient he is. He waited a whole year for him to humble himself. He wouldn't do it. But when you don't do it and judgment comes, it's immediate. I mean, it's like the flash of lightning, all right? Jesus returns. It's like I've warned you for 2,000 years to change your ways and repent. But when you don't, and it's time, it's time. I'm coming with the flash of lightning. All right, so immediately the word was fulfilled against Nebuchadnezzar, and he was driven from humans. So he ate grass like bulls, and his body was wet with the dew of the sky until his hair grew long like feathers of eagles. Doesn't literally say feathers, but like eagles. And his nails like birds, or like the claws of birds. Okay? So the one thing you have to note there is, and we mentioned this 2 weeks ago, how long that took, we don't know, but it doesn't take 7 days for your hair to get that long and your nails to grow that long. So when we talk about 7 times must pass, it has to be more than 7 days. It has to be maybe 7 months, probably more than that. 7 may not actually be the whole point of this, right? It's just, it has to be enough time for your nails to be like claws in your hair to just, your whole body, everything just, you look like a beast. That's what it is. Because you're not shaving, you're not cutting your hair or anything like that. You look like an animal. All right. So that's what he was. And then, but the idea too, he ate grass. He's grazing like the cows are grazing. Everybody, I never ate grass. You ever ate grass before? Yeah, kale. That's like grass, right? Close enough, right? Close enough. But I by the way, I do know when I read, with Nazi concentration camps, people got so hungry they would eat grass. Okay, anything they could find to eat. Of course, they find snakes and just eat them too. And just kill them because they're just so hungry. And rats, in the everything in the barracks there. Anything they could get that could get in your mouth that wouldn't kill you, they would eat. Okay, so that's what happens to him. All right, so he did all that. Then the next verse. At the end of the time, I, Nebuchadnezzar, lifted my eyes to heaven, and my reason returned to me. All right, so see what happened? So whatever moment it's on again now. No, it's dead. It's dead. Battery. So, all right. So, doggone it, I don't have any extra batteries this time. I thought we. Anyway, all right. So at some point, he still had his reasoning to a degree, but yet his reasoning couldn't overcome the fact that he's living like a cow. So I don't know how that works. When people, when people have these psychotic things that happen, when they do actually act because they actually think they are a dog or a cat or I don't know what there's nobody here with an advanced degree in psychology to know how that works either, right? Okay, if your mind is still there or not. But I know when people have multiple personalities, they go in and out with their personalities. All right, enough of that. All right, so my reason returned to me, so I blessed the Most High, and I praised and glorified. Now, okay, by the way, this whole section is just really awesome right here. I blessed the Most High, and I praised and glorified the one who lives forever, because his dominion is an eternal dominion in his kingdom forever and ever. All the inhabitants of the earth are considered nothing, and he does as he wishes with the army of heaven and the inhabitants of the earth. So there is no one who can stay his hand and say to him, "What have you done?" All right? So that's his acknowledgement. You can't find a greater acknowledgement than that. I mean, this is perfect what he says. It's absolutely right. Okay? And it's all the stuff that Daniel was trying to tell him before. Okay? But again, just break it down just a little bit. That he blessed, okay, he praised his kingdom, he lives forever. His All right. Well, it's green now. It has enough power for one to keep it going for a while.
Is it double A?
Yeah. Oh, bless your heart.
The kitchen has everything.
They're all in the good now. So we're mixing batteries here, but that's okay. All right, we're back in business. All right, so again, like I said, when I talk about this with the confirmands, what does it mean when it says, "For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory"? Kingdom means, I use the illustration of you remember what it said about the British Empire? The sun never set. Okay, so think of that day when the British Empire kind of ruled the world, but the king or queen of England, that was his or her kingdom. But did he or she have power over all of it? No, because eventually Parliament came into being, right? So Parliament really had power. So it's one thing to say you have a kingdom, and it's another thing to say you have the kingdom and the power, which means you're not just a figurehead that you just sit in a palace in London and people think you're awesome or they hate you because you got all the money, but you really don't have any control over things. So here in this case, I think this is what Nebuchadnezzar is saying. His dominion is, to me, I think that means his power. His power is throughout, and it's eternal, and his kingdom is everywhere. So he's not just limited to the Jewish people. He rules it all. And he rules it. He doesn't just own it all, he rules it all. All right, I see that as what Nebuchadnezzar is saying here. All right, and then when he, the Most High, looks upon the earth, this is the next verse, all the inhabitants of the earth are considered nothing. What does that really mean? Doesn't mean he didn't care about them. What is it? Does it say consider nothing? And yeah, are regarded as nothing. Yeah. So what is that? What? In comparison to him. Yeah. They don't have, in comparison, they have no power.
One thing I noticed too is if you look at what Nebuchadnezzar was saying about himself,
Yeah.
before all this took place, he's totally now put himself out of the picture because he was the God
Yes.
when he was talking before. He was the power.
He was, yeah.
Now he has a totally different.
Because now he realizes there's a time I wasn't even better than a cow. I thought I was, like exactly what he said, I thought I was the God. He still worshiped his own God, but I ruled it all. It was mine. It was my dominion, my kingdom. And God, he says, no, I can show you what you really are. You're no better than a cow. And I was the most powerful man in the world. And God can do that to me. So when it says all the inhabitants of the earth are considered nothing or regarded as nothing, he said that's what it is. Don't ever think you're somebody when you line yourself up with God. Now with other people, you probably do. We all will at some point. But when you line yourself up to God, don't ever think you're somebody. Remember that line Paul uses? God is no respecter of persons. In fact, if you listen to the epistle reading today, which isn't the sermon, James is talking about if you show preferential treatment to the rich who come into your house and to the church and say to the poor, yeah, you just sit over there. He says, haven't you discriminated among yourselves? In other words, you are not truly God's people. God shows no respect to any sort of distinctions that people have. And that's what Nebuchadnezzar is acknowledging, that such a thing doesn't exist with God. And he does as he wishes with the army of heaven, which is interesting he says that because no man on earth can do anything with the army of heaven. Now we can dominate and control other people, but we can't do anything to the angels in heaven. Okay, but this God, the Most High, is so powerful that he controls the army of heaven and the inhabitants of the earth. So there's no one who can stop him and say, what have you done? So again, you don't argue with God and think you'll win. You know, those people who say, when they get, they are atheists or whatever, and they get to Judgment Day, and if they were wrong, and they'll say, well, God, it was your fault that I didn't know who you were. And it's like, you won't say anything to God. When you stand before God, his sheer being is so overwhelming that you'll just tremble in fear of who he is. Okay? And no one can ever challenge God and think you get by with it. But people do it all the time. They never get by with it, though. All right. So then at that time, my reason returned to me, and for the honor of my kingdom, my splendor and glory returned to me. All right. So what does it tell you about God? Oh, let me read the rest of it because there's even more. So my counselors and nobles sought me. I was reinstated over my kingdom, and surpassing greatness was added to me. So what did God do when he humbled himself? Yeah, exactly. Isn't that incredible? What does it tell you about the grace of God? It can so supersede anything you could ever imagine, to the point that you deserve to live like a beast, and to be treated like a beast. But not only does he not do that ultimately when you humble yourself, but he will actually exalt you above where you were before. That's what God can do. That's what God did for this pagan ruler. This wasn't even one of his own people. He did it for his pagan ruler. Why would God do that? What's the lesson God's trying to convey or teach? Yeah.
Someone who is mighty, will change the smallest also.
Right. But change him how? I mean, obviously we know, but change him how? That's the key. To be a, yeah, right. Now, Nebuchadnezzar doesn't become a godly person. He doesn't become a believer, as we'll kind of emphasize a little bit here. But that's the point. It's saying that God can do this. He can take Nebuchadnezzar, he can do that to him. He can take Saul on the road to Damascus, knock him off his high horse as he's traveling, and make him, nothing, and then make him into the greatest man in the world is known except Christ. Okay, he can do that to people. All right, but the point is, he can do that glorious, gracious act. And that's the awesomeness of God. So he's trying to communicate, I think he's trying to communicate this, the true God is not some vindictive, evil, angry being. He's one who truly wants what's best for us, but what's best for us is not us. What's best for us is him. And when we acknowledge him and recognize our need for him, he does that. Okay, and that's what I see happening here with Nebuchadnezzar. All right, so then the last verse says, "Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise, exalt, and honor the King of heaven, because all his works are true and his ways are just. All who walk in arrogance, he is able to humble." Right? He's a living example, right, of what of this truth. Okay, it's one thing to be able to just say it. It's another thing to have experienced it and now say it. And that's what Nebuchadnezzar is saying. But notice what he also says in there. Is he saying God did something wrong here in any of this? No. He's saying, I deserved it. He's actually now admitting, I deserved this. God did what was right, and I acknowledge that. And that's how he ends it. All right? So that's how this chapter ends. That's all I got on that one. Okay? I don't think I had any other comments from any of this. All right, so yeah, we got 2 minutes, but I'll just tell you what we're going to do next. So next week is now the writing of the wall, on the wall episode. I lost my bookmark. Oh, there it is. The writing of the wall episode, which you kind of know that phrase, but you may not know about the story. It's a fascinating story, and it's another historic event, and it will be the end of the Babylonian kingdom next week, in the beginning of the Medo-Persian Empire. Okay, so this is it. This is the last thing you hear from Nebuchadnezzar. We're done with him, and we kind of wish and maybe hope that somehow maybe he did become a believer, but the reason why I read several commentators on this, and some say, I think that means that he was a true believer. But he says, no, if you understand it, and I'm still hoping he was, but if you understand the world of that day, they were all polytheistic, right? They believed in many gods. And so what he's only acknowledging is that God is the Most High. It doesn't mean he gave up his God. He just says he's the one. But if he were to give up his God, then if he were to be a true believer, he would give up all the other gods. But that never happened. It never happened. Okay, he retained his pagan beliefs. He just added God to it, and God doesn't say that's good enough. No, you shall have no other gods. Not just I must be number one, and it's okay if you have a bunch of others. He says no, you shall have no other gods. That big statue down, yeah, that golden 90-foot. But since I got 1 more minute, that's what I thought was interesting, because it made me realize if you're in a position of power, leadership, and if you truly want to be a godly person, it's really hard. Okay, I mean, it's only the same thing of election year, and it's really, really hard because the pressure upon you to have to compromise this and that, like if we take the abortion issue, if you want to say, you shall not murder any babies in the womb, whether it was cause of rape or incest or not, you're going to lose. So if you want to get votes, you have to say there are times when it's okay to kill a baby. Okay, that's how you get votes. That's how it works. And real quick, I told a couple, but I didn't tell you guys. I found this show on Tubi called, it's a BBC show called Yes Minister. If you can find it, it might have been on Roku too, but on Tubi. It's a BBC show called Yes Minister. It's a guy who gets elected to, he's not a pastor, he's a minister in a state office in the cabinet in England in 1982. Okay, he gets elected. He's kind of naive and he's kind of not real smart. So but he wants to do what's right, okay? And so he had the undersecretaries who are not elected. They're just hired people by the state, and they kind of always advise him to do this or that or this or that. So it's all about, he says, well, we need to do this. And the undersecretary says, well, minister, if you do that, then what about this? And it's all about, because there's one quick episode I'll tell you. There was, to get something done, they had to accept a bribe from one of the Muslim countries, Middle Eastern countries. Okay, and he's like, we don't accept bribes for anything. Well, minister, but if you don't, you will offend them. And if you offend them, then they will not do this treaty with us. And we really want to have this treaty. And it goes on and on about, so do you really want to hold to your principles or not? Okay, and that's what it came down to. Every time he wanted to hold to his principles, the minister, who was a total moral vacuum, and he knew it and he didn't care, was like, well, minister, if you want to do that, then what about this and this and that? Okay, and it was, if you want to stop smoking, because that was 1982, then you're going to have to do this. You're going to have to, you realize we get 4.5 billion, that's when he becomes prime minister. You get 4.5 billion pounds a year from the tobacco industry. Do you really want to do that? And do you really want to lay off 250,000 jobs because that's how many people work for this industry? Do you really want to do that for the sake of 100,000 who die every year from smoking? So it's all about, everything's trying to be compromised. And so eventually he gives in, and the Minister of Health becomes a person who is the lobbyist for the tobacco industry. That's how he ends up. It's hilarious, actually. But it shows how corrupt government is, and how if you want to be right, it's really, really hard. That's why I don't know why anyone ever want to be a Christian. You want to be a Christian and rule, but it's going to be really hard to maintain the truth that we hold to. All right, and that's big levels. Smaller levels, not so much. All right, that's enough. All right, so next week we'll pick it up with chapter 5. Let's close with prayer. Blessed Lord, we are grateful for this passage from Daniel and the episode that it conveys to us. And we ask that you'll help us to understand how important it is to recognize you truly are the Lord of Lords, and that we all need to be humbled before you in acknowledging who you are, and acknowledge that anything about us is only because of you and your grace and greatness in our lives. And so we pray that you'll keep us always focused on you and not on ourselves, that we may continue to live the lives that you call us to live, that we may shine the light of your grace in this world and not our own. We ask this in the name of Jesus, our blessed Savior. Amen.